Welcome to Wisdom of the Bible channel. 5 extraordinary supernatural events unfolded after Moses' death, profoundly shaping Israel's destiny for centuries to come. The passing of this great leader, who had walked with God and guided millions, marked a pivotal moment in history. As the Israelites stood on the edge of the Promised Land, the world they knew shifted dramatically. Prepare yourself, for the events that followed will deepen your understanding of this sacred story and its enduring impact. After leading Israel through the wilderness for 120 years, Moses ascended Mount Nebo, his heart heavy with longing as he gazed across the Jordan River at the land of milk and honey he would never set foot in. And there, in solitude, he breathed his last. What transpired in the wake of his death remains one of the most enigmatic and awe-inspiring chapters in the Bible. Rich with mystery and divine intervention, the Bible reveals that God himself buried Moses in a hidden valley in the land of Moab, an act of divine intimacy unparalleled in Scripture. No other figure in the Bible received such a sacred burial, performed by the hands of the Almighty, underscoring Moses' unique role as God's servant. The location of his tomb was concealed, and despite countless searches across millennia, no trace of it has ever been found, a testament to God's deliberate plan to prevent its discovery. The mystery deepens in the book of Jude, verse 9, where a celestial conflict erupts over Moses' body, a battle that pierces the veil between the physical and spiritual realms. The archangel Michael, heaven's mighty warrior, clashed with Satan himself in a struggle so intense it reverberated through the unseen world, an event unlike any other recorded in the Bible, highlighting the cosmic significance of Moses' legacy. Why did Satan fiercely contest possession of Moses' body, engaging in such a dramatic confrontation with Michael? Some biblical scholars suggest that Satan sought to transform Moses' tomb into a shrine, tempting Israel to worship the man who had delivered them from Egypt and risk plunging them into idolatry, a sin that plagued the nation time and again. Imagine the revered leader, who once stood face to face with God on Mount Sinai, being twisted into an object of false devotion, undermining the very covenant he had mediated. Others propose that Satan leveraged Moses' sin of striking the rock at Meribah, where he disobeyed God, as a legal claim to his body, seeking to tarnish his legacy. Yet Michael, radiant with divine authority as the commander of God's angelic hosts, stood resolute, proclaiming with unshakable conviction, "The Lord rebuke you," silencing Satan's accusations and affirming God's ultimate sovereignty over Moses' fate. The celestial battle was fierce, yet its outcome was decisive. For Moses' body vanished, hidden by God's hand in a way that has baffled seekers for over 3,400 years. The secrecy of the burial site preserved Israel from the temptation of idolizing their leader, ensuring that their worship remained fixed on God alone. Centuries later, the mystery of Moses' death took an astonishing turn when he appeared alive, radiant with glory, alongside Elijah, conversing with Jesus during the Transfiguration on a mountaintop in Galilee. This extraordinary moment, witnessed by Peter, James, and John, revealed that Moses' death was not the end, but a transition into a divine purpose that spanned eternity. How could a man who had died so long ago stand in the presence of the Messiah, discussing the salvation of the world? This event underscores the profound enigma of Moses' passing, marking it as the beginning of a series of transformative miracles that reshaped Israel's journey. The day after Moses' death, a shocking and immediate change swept through the Israelite camp, as the manna, the miraculous bread from heaven that had sustained them for 40 years, ceased to fall. As the sun rose over the plains of Moab, families emerged from their tents expecting to gather the sweet, honey-flavored flakes that had nourished millions, only to find barren sand and jagged rocks stretching endlessly before them. Whispers of panic rippled through the tribes as parents clutched their children, wondering how they would survive without this divine provision. For 4 decades, this manna had been a tangible sign of God's faithfulness, requiring no toil or sowing, a daily gift that fed a nation wandering in the wilderness. But with Moses gone and Israel poised to enter the Promised Land, the manna vanished, signaling a profound shift in God's relationship with his people. The cessation of the manna coincided with Israel's crossing of the Jordan River, a moment of transition as they stepped into the land God had sworn to Abraham centuries earlier. It was as if God declared, "You now have a land flowing with milk and honey. Cultivate it with your hands and trust in my provision." The change was abrupt and disorienting, forcing a people accustomed to effortless gathering to embrace the labor of farming. They had to learn the rhythms of plowing fields, planting seeds, and waiting patiently for harvests under the scorching Canaanite sun. Many grumbled against Joshua, their new leader, their hearts heavy with nostalgia for the days when Moses interceded and manna fell like dew. The transition tested their faith, and some feared that God's presence had departed with their beloved prophet, leaving them to face an uncertain future alone. The first months in the Promised Land were fraught with hardship, as Israel rationed dwindling stores of manna and supplemented their diet with sparse foods reminiscent of their slave days in Egypt. Hunger gnawed at their resolve, and the elderly whispered of the miracles they had witnessed under Moses, wondering if such wonders were gone forever. Yet, as spring arrived, the first harvest burst forth from the fertile soil of Canaan, yielding golden wheat, juicy figs, and rich olive oil that filled their storehouses. The end of the manna was not a sign of God's abandonment, but a call to a new chapter of stewardship and faith. Moses' death marked the dawn of an era where trust in God was expressed through toil and patience, as Israel learned to partner with their Creator in cultivating the land He had given them. Despite the abundance of the new harvests, many Israelites yearned for the manna, not merely for its taste, but for what it represented, a daily assurance of God's care and closeness. That heavenly bread had been more than sustenance. It was a symbol of their dependence on God, a reminder of His covenant love through the harshest deserts. Without it, their faith had to mature, evolving from childlike reliance to a deeper partnership with God. To preserve this memory, a golden jar of manna was placed in the Ark of the Covenant, nestled beside the stone tablets of the law, a sacred relic of the days when heaven itself fed the earth. This act ensured that future generations would know of God's provision, even as they walked in a new season of responsibility and growth. Moses' death fundamentally altered how God communicated with His people, leaving a void that reshaped their spiritual life. For 40 years, Moses had spoken with God face to face, as one speaks with a friend, descending from Mount Sinai with divine words that guided every step of Israel's journey. His death severed this intimate channel, leaving Joshua and the people grappling with uncertainty about how they would discern God's will. The loss was profound, akin to a child losing the voice of a parent, and it sparked a crisis of guidance that reverberated through the camp. Families gathered around campfires, their faces etched with anxiety, wondering if God would still lead them as clearly as He had through Moses' intercession. In place of Moses' direct communion, God introduced a new method of guidance through the Urim and Thummim, two sacred stones carried by the high priest, used to seek simple yes or no answers to pressing questions. This shift was jarring, like moving from a heartfelt conversation to a series of coded signals, requiring Israel to adapt their expectations and approach to seeking God's direction. The high priest, adorned in his ornate breastplate, would consult these stones in solemn ceremonies, often in the presence of tribal leaders, as the people awaited divine answers with bated breath. Israel had to learn patience and trust in framing their inquiries, trusting that God's will would be revealed through this new, less intimate means. As time passed, God raised up prophets to serve as His mouthpiece, men and women who spoke through visions and dreams, filled with symbolic imagery and divine warnings. Unlike Moses, whose words carried the clarity of the law, these prophets spoke in riddles, often requiring discernment and interpretation. Introducing new challenges for the nation, false prophets arose, sowing confusion with promises of peace or prosperity that contradicted God's law, and without Moses to arbitrate, Israel had to develop a keener ability to test these voices. Prophecies were weighed against the Torah, ensuring they upheld the covenant and led them away from idolatry. This transition pushed the people to lean more heavily on the written law and the guidance of priests, fostering a faith that was both introspective and communal. The priests assumed a more prominent role in guiding Israel's spiritual life, not only consulting the Urim, but also interpreting the law and overseeing worship at the tabernacle. This marked a significant departure from the days when Moses stood alone as God's intermediary. Encouraging communal worship, the change sparked a movement of personal devotion, as families began praying and studying the law in their homes, much like children learning to navigate life without constant oversight. Priests taught Israel to offer heartfelt sacrifices with sincerity and conviction, seeking God through repentance and obedience. Moses' absence compelled Israel to mature spiritually, laying a foundation for a faith that could endure the trials of their conquest. The death of Moses nearly ignited a civil war among Israel's tribes, exposing the fragility of their unity. Shortly after Moses' death, a crisis erupted when the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh settled east of the Jordan River, constructed a massive altar by the riverbank, The sight alarmed the Western tribes, fearing it signaled rebellion or a rival worship site, violating God's command to offer sacrifices only at the tabernacle. Without Moses' steady hand, the nation teetered on the edge of self-destruction, risking internal conflict. Joshua struggled to quell tensions, his authority untested compared to Moses' presence. In a bid for peace, a delegation led by priest Phinehas confronted the eastern tribes, demanding an answer for their actions. The eastern tribes explained, "This altar is a memorial, not for sacrifices, but to affirm our unity with you." Their words diffused the crisis, and the western tribes returned home, averting war. Yet the incident left lingering scars of distrust, foreshadowing future divisions. The altar dispute revealed how deeply Israel relied on Moses' leadership to unite tribes. In his absence, tribes asserted independence, sparking conflicts over land, water rights, and grazing lands. Joshua convened a great assembly at Shiloh, where tribal elders forged agreements to resolve disputes peacefully. The altar, named Ed, stood as a witness to the day Israel nearly fractured, urging remembrance. Moses' absence exposed the challenges of maintaining unity without his singular leadership. Despite turmoil, Israel transformed, evolving from nomads into a settled nation with a distinct identity. Under Joshua's leadership, Canaan was divided among tribes, fulfilling God's promise. Families settled, building homes and farming fields, embracing stewardship. Moses' laws became the bedrock of governance, guiding justice and worship. Local courts emerged, led by elders, ensuring fairness in disputes. Economically, families claimed property, establishing markets for trade goods. Culturally, Israel absorbed skills from Canaanites, mastering pottery and irrigation, while maintaining faith. Militarily, tribes formed militias, ready to defend their land or rally against enemies. Worship flourished at local altars, weaving faith into daily life. Moses' absence forced Israel to grow, setting the stage for the era of judges. This period was marked by cycles of apostasy, oppression, and deliverance, shaping Israel's identity. Moses' legacy endured in laws, stories, faith, guiding Israel into a future.
Hello, dear viewers. Thank you for watching our channel, Wisdom of the Bible. I personally invite you to subscribe to our channel. It supports us and helps us create more videos. Thank you, and God bless you.